I'm Lindsay from In Theory Farm, and today I'm going to show you how we disbud. Everybody seems to do it a little bit differently, so this may not be quite how you do things, but here's what works for us. So I'm going to start by giving this little guy some Banamine. So Banamine's dose is 1 ml per 100 pounds. So he's about 10 pounds, so I'm going to give him 0.1 mils. Ideal would be IV, but I'm just going to give this orally because it's hard to hit a vein on a baby if you don't need to. So ideally you might give that an hour or so beforehand, but at least he'll have that pain med on board for later. So I know when we did our survey for the club a while back, get away from the iron. I know when we did our survey a while back, it was about 50-50 people who did not use lidocaine because they didn't know how, and people who didn't use it because they didn't have access from their vet. So get away from the iron. Sorry, this is a lot of farm animal stupidity. Get. So I'm going to show you how to use lidocaine. We have access to it, so we always use it. It makes it a lot easier. So the general rule of thumb is that you can use about 1 ml per kid. That may be a little lower with Nigerians, I'm not 100% sure, but lidocaine has a fairly low toxicity in goats, so that's why some people's vets are hesitant to give it to them if they aren't sure that they'll be able to use it correctly. So goats have 2 nerves that supply the horn bud on either side. So there's 4 sites that you need to desensitize if you want to get good numbing. So a little premature there. So what we want to do is go from the corner of the eye to the horn bud, so the front corner and the back corner of the eye to the horn bud. And in the middle of those lines will be where you want to inject your needle. So we'll do that 4 times. So approximately 1/4 ml each time. And typically when you're doing a subcutaneous injection, you'll want to go in at a fairly shallow angle. I found that for me that's pretty hard on these little babies with very little skin above the skull. I tend to go almost perpendicular until I hit bone and then back out and turn at an angle just a little bit. That's just been easiest for me. So I'll go ahead and do that. This is easiest if you have a helper to hold, but my helper is holding the camera. Turn your face so I can see it. There we go. Okay, so there's my first poke. That seems to always happen. You get a good poke, they wiggle, and then you come back out. Easy. So if it's not quite perfect for each spot, don't worry about it too much. And you'll see a little bubble where you've gone in, and you know, sometimes you may come out the other side and you'll see a wet spot. That's okay. You get better at it. Any try is a good try. Okay, so now I can do the other side. So corner of the eye to the horn bud. Easy, buddy. Easy, buddy. Hold still. Okay, and then back corner to the horn bud. The back sides are always a little easier for me than the front sides. I think there's just a little more tissue there to deal with. So now we're gonna leave him alone for 2 or 3 minutes and just let that sink in, and then we'll come back and we'll actually disbud. Okay, he's had a few minutes to get numb. During that time, I did a couple other kids. So I have a disbudding box. I don't like it. So this is actually easier for me. And if you're new to goats and you don't have a disbudding box, this works pretty well. So I basically just put the kid between my knees. I'm not actually sitting on him. I'm just pressing with my knees. Make sure you have a glove. You don't want to burn your hand. It sucks. My disbudding iron has been on for a while, so I don't need to test it, but you can keep like a wood block near you so that you can make sure it is nice and hot. You don't have to clip their head, but it makes it a lot less smoky, so that's just more for me than anything. So I'm just gonna make sure he's sitting down in a way that I can hold on to him, and make sure I can grab his ears. So I'm going to start off just by going over the horn buds, and I won't stay too long on each one. I do a little bit of twisting while I'm going. I tend to blow the smoke away just for my benefit. So getting just a short one to begin with just helps me get the shape seated well. So the typical wisdom is to go until you see a copper ring. On our Swiss breeds, we have found that that is not enough. We go right down to skull and pop that whole horn bud off. So I've gotten down pretty far on that one, so I'll just swap sides, let that cool off for a second. I can just resettle him if he wiggles. I think if you're used to doing disbudding without any numbing, I think you'll probably notice that they're a little quieter. I mean, they're still scared because you're holding them, but... So I think you probably just saw I just took the disbudding iron and just popped that horn bud off. He's pretty young, so his came off easily. So if he was a girl, I would just stop here, but since he's a boy and these Swiss breeds tend to grow extra big horns or have a horn base that is really wide, I'm going to do a figure 8 burn. So slightly forward and slightly center of what we just did. Probably should have clipped a little farther forward. So that's just overlapping just like a figure 8. These always seem to be just a little trickier for me to get done, but I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Easy. Easy wiggles. So I just burn down to the skull and flip that little piece of horn bud off. So at this point he is done. I'll hold him up a little closer, and you can see, so we're farther than the copper ring that's just straight down to skull, but you can see I didn't spend too much time holding it on there, so we've never had any problem with going too far or having anybody act like they got too hot. Okay, I wanted to show you guys how this would go with a buckling that you waited way too long to disbud because it's been raining and gross. So I didn't get the numbing on the backside of this horn very well, so you'll probably hear him be a lot more vocal than the last one. And his horns are huge. He's probably approaching 3 weeks old, which for a Swiss breed is just too old. So I've just kind of got to do my best. On the plus side, it's a lot easier to see where you need to go because he's got a horn. On the downside, it's much harder to hold on. There's a lot more tissue to burn through, so it's just much harder. Go. There's that side. Okay, so I'm still going to do that figure 8. It's just a little bit more challenging because he's already got that horn base. Okay. So since I waited so long on him, I might have scurs. Hopefully not, but with our little ones that we disbud at the proper time, we don't tend to have scurs. So hopefully this guy's not too late. All right, and there it is on a slightly more mature buck kid.